Let's talk about the deposit creation model. So this is a T account. So a T account is a partial balance sheet showing changes to assets and liabilities. Your assets will always be on the left and your liabilities will be on the right. And one thing that is important to always remember, and if you've taken accounting, you'll know this, assets must equal liabilities. So these two numbers have to sum to the same amount. So for a bank, the assets are reserves, and we know that total reserves are required reserves plus excess reserves. Loans, and the reason that that's an asset is because people owe them money. And government securities, which are bonds. Liabilities are deposits, and the reason that that's a liability is because the bank does not own the deposits. The depositors, you and me, we own those deposits. So assets and liabilities. So first, some assumptions. So remember, in economics, when we build models, it is a simplified version of reality, and we make some assumptions, ceteris paribus, all other things remaining equal, so that we can prove a point. So assumptions of the simple deposit creation model are that there are no leakages into cash, which means that every time someone takes out a new loan, 100% of those new loans will be deposits in either the same bank or a different bank. But all new loans become deposits within the banking system, meaning that people don't take take out a loan for $10,000 and then keep $1,000 to spend as they choose. Second assumption is that banks wish to be fully loaned out, profit maximizers, so there's no reason for them to hold idle excess reserves. So that assumption means that banks will lend out money until their excess reserves are zero and their total reserves are the reserves that are required. So that is equilibrium condition. And the third assumption is that we start with the deposits as the only liability and reserves and loans as the only assets. And for purposes of our example, we're going to assume that the required reserve ratio is 10%. So let's start with our example. And this is very complicated, so you might have to watch this more than once. Number one, we're going to suppose that there was a $500 cash deposit is made at the Thurman State Bank. So here's our initial T account for the Thurman State Bank. $500 are added over here with my deposits, so $500 in the liability side. And right now, the total reserves are $500 because nothing has happened. Now we're going to separate the reserves into what's required and what's excess. And again, remember that we are assuming that our ratio is 10%. So required reserve is the reserve ratio times deposits, so that's 10% times our $500 deposit. Our required reserves are 50. So that means everything over $50 is excess. So excess reserves are total reserves minus required reserves, or $500 minus 50, or $450. So $450 plus 50 is $500, and over here we've got that $500 deposit. Okay? Now, because Thurman State Bank is a profit maximizer, we are going to now loan out all of its excess reserves. So that means that $450 will be loaned out. So the T account ends up looking like this. Our required reserves are 50. Now, instead of having excess reserves, we have loans. So we've made our first loan for $450, but still $450 plus 50 is $500, and we've got $500 on this side. Each side must always total the same number. So now that $450 loan that Thurman State Bank has loaned out, whoever I loan that to is going to deposit that in another bank, Angie's Bank. So here's the T account for Angie's Bank. We've got that deposit, $450, which was loaned out from the first bank. We know that 10% of that is required reserves. So 10% of $450 is $45. The rest of that, which is $450 minus 45 is $405. That's going to be loaned out because that is excess reserves. So now a second loan goes out into the banking system for $405. Here's the important thing to notice. $405 is just a little bit less than the original loan of $450. So the same money is being loaned out multiple times. So basically, through this fractional reserve banking system, money is being cloned, if you will. It is being created. So loan number 2, $405 is deposited in bank number 3. There's your deposit, $405. That was the loan. 10% of that is $40.50. 405 minus $40.50 is our excess reserves. That's immediately loaned out. So now $364.50, that's the third loan. There that money goes. This goes on and on and on until there are no more excess reserves in the banking system. The system is in equilibrium and everything is fully loaned up. So the initial increase in excess reserves affects the economy with a multiplier effect. So when I say the initial increase, go back to bank number 1. The initial increase in excess reserves is $450. Okay? That has been multiplied to create money. So now I'm going to stop here, and in the next time, we're going to talk about these multipliers.